Thank you, Robert. It is a pleasure to be here. What great timing. I had no idea that Einstein's Alley was going to be coordinating with the U.S. Supreme Court on this subject. But it's nice to see so much interest in this topic. I appreciate all of you coming out bright and early. I know my job is twofold. One, to keep you awake, and secondly, to inform you about immigration. And I once gave a talk, and afterwards, this older woman came up to me and was complimenting me on the talk. So, of course, I felt very good about that. And then I said, "So, you understand the topic better?" She said, "Well, not really, but I'm confused at a much higher level." So I guess that was a compliment, although I wasn't entirely sure. I got interested in the subject of immigration 5 years ago when I married a German woman. I became an object of the immigration system. Previously, I was like many Americans. I thought a little bit about it. It was more of an abstraction, but I never really understood exactly how the process operated. But in seeking to bring her to the United States and get her a green card, I discovered how difficult the whole process has become. We eventually were successful. We got the green card. We are close to citizenship, although there have been some blips along the way there. She's hoping to vote in D.C. This fall. I haven't had the heart to explain to her about the Electoral College and the fact that in 2008, Obama got 92% of the vote in D.C., so maybe her vote isn't as crucial as she believes. I'm not going to disabuse her of that. She's really excited about the possibility of voting. But in the process of getting the green card and going through the naturalization process, I discovered many things that even I, as I thought a well-informed American, hadn't really known. For example, I discovered many immigration offices are located in remote suburban locations that are hard to find and inaccessible via mass transit. So basically, we have a policy where if you don't have a car, you're going to have a hard time getting a green card. Secondly, I learned that our application process still in the 21st century is paper-based and not electronic. I cannot count the number of hours I spent at a photocopy machine copying documents, sending them to the government, waiting weeks and months on a mail response. I mean, it takes a long time and it's very expensive to go through the process. It's a very costly and inefficient system. And then finally, I discovered how truly complex the whole process is. It's very easy to send the wrong form in. It's easy to not provide the correct documentation. I have a PhD in political science. I thought this would be an advantage. Turned out not to be the case. In fact, maybe it's because I had a PhD that I couldn't do the process very well. I don't know. But it really took me a long time to figure it out. So based on this very personal experience that I had, I wrote the book that Robert mentioned entitled Brain Gain, and then undertook some follow-up research on why immigration has become so controversial and what we should do about it. The big problem in the immigration area is that people perceive the costs as being high while the benefits are quite low. Given that situation, we shouldn't be surprised that the topic is radioactive for many politicians. It's hard to resolve. It's an emotional issue for many people. Robert was talking about how our national dialogue over immigration is broken. It's hard to have a good conversation on the topic. But the irony is that once I actually got into the research and looked at the types of projects that had been undertaken, there actually is a lot of evidence documenting that the costs are far less than people imagine and the benefits actually are greater. But the American public doesn't understand that. We have to do a better job explaining the immigration topic to the general public. These controversies over immigration are especially difficult during periods of high unemployment. I mean, I give a lot of talks on immigration. I travel around the country. And, one of the most common arguments that I've heard in the last 2 or 3 years against doing immigration reform is the fact that we have had, depending on the time period, 8, 9, or 10% national unemployment. The argument is that we don't need immigrants of any sort, whether we're talking about legal or undocumented immigrants, when current Americans cannot find jobs. And so based on that reasoning, it's very easy for people just to say, we shouldn't do anything. It's easy for politicians in Washington to punt and not do anything. And it's one of the issues, one of the reasons why this issue has stagnated. It's a little unusual because typically in a policy situation where everybody is dissatisfied with the status quo, the politicians figure out how to move forward, break the logjam, and take action. You know, it's kind of a rule that when people are unhappy, politicians like to do things. But in immigration, we have not managed to achieve much progress. What a lot of people don't realize is that even during periods of high national unemployment, we actually have worker shortages in many fields. I'm actually working on a paper with the Partnership for a New American Economy about this seeming paradox. We have looked at government employment reports, industry projections. We've done interviews with labor leaders and business officials. We've looked at a range of different types of industry, some high-skilled industries as well as some low-skilled industry. We found that many areas are having difficulty filling positions, and that this is constraining economic growth and long-term competitiveness. Now, this is a familiar story in the IT area, information technology. For example, Microsoft has reported that it has almost 5,000 unfilled job positions and difficulty hiring scientists and engineers. Brad Smith, their general counsel, testified before Congress last year and said that it took an average of 65 days to fill openings for the typical position that they have. But we see the same story in a number of other industries. Take the example of healthcare, a topic about which all of us are deeply concerned about. There are doctor and nursing shortages in many different specialties. A survey of hospital chief executives found that 65% were seeking more physicians, 41% wanted more surgeons, and 28% needed more OB/GYN doctors. We have found shortages in areas in terms of occupational therapists, registered nurses, and pharmacists. An American Hospital Association survey estimated a shortage of 116,000 nurses in community hospitals. And if you analyze the current population surveys put out by the U.S. Census Bureau, you can see that it is projected that we're going to have a shortage of nearly 260,000 registered nurses by the year 2025. So we're facing a looming crisis in healthcare at many different levels, but the difficulty filling jobs, the problems of finding some of these specialties, the difficulty of finding the home care workers, the nurses, the occupational therapists, and the pharmacists is a real problem facing our country, and it constrains economic growth. It's not just a healthcare issue, though. You can look at manufacturing. In 2010, at the height of the Great Recession, American manufacturers reported 250,000 open jobs, which was double the number of 2009. So even during a period then, we had almost 10% unemployment. There were 250,000 open jobs just in the manufacturing sector alone. In agriculture, we can't find people to harvest fruits and take care of the vegetables. These are jobs that Americans, by and large, don't want. 3/4 of the current farm workers in the United States come from outside the United States. Most of the work is being done by non-Americans because even unemployed Americans won't take these positions. Now, I actually understand this. I have some special expertise in this area. I grew up on a farm in Ohio. I grew up on a dairy farm, used to milk the cows before I went to school. It was actually great training for the rest of my life because any job that I've had thereafter I didn't consider work because it wasn't physical labor, it wasn't 100 degrees outside, or it wasn't 0 degrees outside. Like, you know, when you're on a dairy farm, it doesn't matter what the weather is, like the cows have to be milked twice a day. So I understand why many Americans don't want to do those jobs. I didn't want to do that job. When I was young, my goal in life was to find an inside job that had no heavy lifting involved. At Brookings, I found that job. It's a good job. You look at the restaurant area. Industry officials report the problems of hiring waiters and dishwashers in those areas. When you think about the typical labor pool for the restaurant industry, many of their workers come from the demographic of 16 to 24-year-olds. And based on census numbers, that demographic group is only going to grow 4% over the next decade. But yet, the restaurant industry estimates that its need for food service workers is going to rise 11% over the next decade. They're going to have openings for 1.3 million new workers over the next 10 years. That pool of young people who traditionally fill those types of jobs is not going to be nearly big enough to supply all those workers. And then finally, the hotel industry. Hotels can't find enough front desk workers. They can't find enough housekeepers. Did some interviews with people in the Marriott chain. They are forecasting job growth of 6% this year to around 212,000 positions. The company plans to add another 15,000 rooms in the United States just in this year alone. They already are having difficulty hiring workers in the culinary areas, in sales, and in marketing, and they're very worried about their capacity to fill those shortages in the future. All of these shortages, all of the problems of finding workers constrains economic growth. If companies can't get the workers they need, they can't add jobs and they can't expand their businesses. This limits the possibilities for longer-term development. And so I call this a paradox because, again, coming back to what I said at the beginning, you know, the typical argument against doing immigration reform is we have high national unemployment, and so we shouldn't allow people from outside the United States to come in because of that issue. But yet in industry after industry, and it's not just the high-skilled industries, it's also agriculture, hotels, and restaurants, we're seeing this problem of worker shortages, and it's creating a real problem in terms of economic growth. It's vital that we address this topic in order to boost our country's long-term competitiveness. It's interesting, Peter Goddard was mentioning one of his first scholars, Albert Einstein, and the fact that 2/3 of the current scholars come from abroad. In my book, Brain Gain, I actually put a picture of Albert Einstein on the front cover to remind all of us about the many contributions that immigrants have made to American life.